Welcome back to Bombastic Nation and ting and ting and ting. Another vibe coming at you, man. Another vibe coming your way, you know. Yeah, I'm trying to scare myself a little bit, you know what I mean? And here's what I'm gonna do. I'm from Grenada. This is the island right next to Trinidad and Tobago. And this here is a folk tale uh, or a folklore coming from Trinidad and Tobago, which kind of translate to Grenada too. This one is called the Papa Boys. I hope I pronounced that right there, Bois. And a lot of our folk tales in the Caribbean have African descent. You know what I mean? So it's probably a little frightening because it's different, but it's also historical because a lot of these things come from actual religious background, which people wouldn't consider religious here because everybody think of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. But I kind of see African folklore, that it came to be folklore, probably derived from something like Greek mythology. But of course, it was demonized once it come to the New World, because one of the best ways to separate people from themselves and their culture is to destroy the religion, because that's the belief that could cause revolt and revolution and thing. But I ain't gonna talk too long about that. We gonna get into this one here. This one is called Papa Boys, and this is part two. So there's a part one somewhere. We're gonna try to find that. Maybe I should start with the part one. But you know what? Let's just do this. Let's YouTube and simmer.
Forests are dangerous places to pre-industrial populations. There's wild animals in there, and they're dark and mysterious. So it's not surprising that for any peoples who lived close to forest, you would develop a body of folklore that had to do with the dangers of the forest.
The chief figure in the folklore, as far as I know it, and he was always there, and he has always been there, is Papa Bois. Papa Bois is reputed to be the guardian of the forest. I guess this is a retention to tales way before we can remember, way before this century, of guardians of the forest and so on. Papa Bois was supposed to be, he was a shapeshifter, as many of them were. So he could appear as anything, but usually he appeared as a large, horned, hairy creature. And he was not against hunting, but he was against indiscriminate hunting. Maybe that was a sort of an environmental control in those times, because people were killing all the animals and so on.
I'm not certain of what shape he assumes, but judging from an Alf Godayo painting, Papa Bois has horns and he has a cloven hoof. I am reminded of the figure of Pan, who in Greek Roman mythology had a similar stature as a nature deity. He played a pipe made out of reeds, and he was half man and half goat.
Historically, these creatures exist as myths in other cultures around the world. But to this day, the forests of Trinidad continue to hold secrets that stir more than just the imagination.
It has been put forward that Papa Bois is not a mythological character, that there was a point in time, several hundred years ago, in the early days of Trinidad, that Trinidad actually possessed a Bigfoot. This is a point of view that I have heard, that foresters, hunters, people who live in the high woods have experienced a long time ago the presence of, or actually saw, the old man of the forest.
These hunters would tell you first-hand experiences of encounters with these strange creatures, and they wouldn't lie. They're telling you they've seen it, they've experienced it. It's no figment of the imagination. They were not drunk or tired or hallucinating, because the dogs were there and there were other people with them. They were witnesses. And these creatures do exist.
Throughout the decades, hunters have claimed to have encounters with a man-like creature of the forest. At the risk of being ridiculed by their peers, they remain true to the stories and are convinced that what they saw was real. Denton Lorenko, a jeweler by trade, relates his own experience of what he saw as a teenager.
I was about 15 years old, now attending St. Mary's College. And what I used to do as a pastime, I would make crab traps, and there were back crabs in abundance. I had approximately 20 traps, and I was down to probably the last 5. I felt a presence as if I was being watched. I could also smell the creature. I thought it was the people living on the beach. They had goats, but there were no goats around. I couldn't hear the goats, I couldn't see the goats. So I stood up and I started to look around me to see what it is that is there, this presence. I was very close to an immortal tree, and there were lots of neon vines coming off of the tree. When I look closely at the vines, there I notice this creature standing up straight, looking at me through the vines.
Wow.
First I thought, well, it could be the vines, how it's shaped or whatever. I'm getting an illusion, right? So I walked up slowly, and I'm like probably 4 feet away from it because it's just behind the vines. It was also covered in coarse hair, very, very coarse hair. I was in total shock seeing this thing, being so close to it, and I could actually smell it more so than ever now. I never saw anything like it. Even though it was covered completely in hair, totally, from head to toe. The eyes were the most prominent feature that you could see on its face. Those 2 eyes, and they were big and round. But why I was so scared is the fact that even though it was 3.5 feet tall, it was stronger than you and me put together. They could rip you apart if it wanted to. I took the fastest way out of the swamp. I dropped my cutlass, and I left my crab traps and my bag and everything, and I ran straight home. I would meet other people from the village that would set crab traps as well. And we would work different parts of the swamp. And I met a guy once, and I told him my experience. And he told me, he said, Denton, you saw a Papa Bois,
They tell me things like that. They saw Papa Bois with animals and so on. Couldn't be true. I don't know if they wanted to make up a story or if they believed that's what they saw. But one hears these things and hears it as something real. I know it couldn't be real. I think you believe,
So you have these creatures, and I believe that what happens is that these creatures, there's an intermarriage of mythologies, so that aspects of European mythology, God and devil, get mixed up with African myths and maybe other kinds of mythologies. Amerindian myths might be in operation as well. So we create these figures as part of our maybe adjustment to our own society, as our ancestors kind of accommodated themselves to the new conditions. They didn't lose their myths, but they merged them with other people's mythologies.
Remember that all the people who came here after the end of slavery did not find an empty place. They found a culture that was already lively, developing. It was basically an African-European, African-French culture. So all the people coming in had to some extent, adapt to that culture. Of course, we know they struggled hard to retain their ancestral cultures, but they were coming into a society where a European-African cultural fusion, what we have come to call Creole culture and a Creole society, was already in place. And so for the Chinese, the Indians, to a lesser extent the Portuguese, Syrian, Lebanese coming in, they had to deal with an already existing mixed, fused culture.
I'm gonna stop that there and thing. That was kind of interesting there. You know what I mean? And like I said, coming from the island, in the islands and thing.
With
You
Bound
hear
for
all
Somebody
these,
just being released as a
all
playable
these
god in
stories
Smite,
and thing.
now
Like,
seems
turn
like the
this
perfect
off.
time to discuss.
Oh, behave yourself. You hear all these stories and thing, boy, you know what I mean? And we really, when I was a kid, we really used to sit outside on like a full moon night and listen to old people tell these stories and thing. Here's an interesting thing. Most of these islands are Catholic islands, and a lot of the what you call voodoo or obia or West African mythology or religion infiltrated the Catholic Church. You know what I mean? I remember going to this old lady's house, right? And she had enamel bowls in every corner of the house with wicks and stuff on it, you know, and it was lit, and there was people's names in there. And I thought it was a Catholic thing until later on I realized, because she was a devout Catholic, you know, and the Catholics were like voodoo bad, obia bad, you know, and here she is. So it's a sort of a voodoo ritual. Yeah, that was strange. Or the fact that the aloe plant, if you plant it in the corners of your house, it's going to keep evil spirits off. You know, so imagine, and when I was growing up on the island, a while back, we didn't have street lights on that, and so there was always stories, and you know, I'm gonna do some research here and look up some stuff, and yeah, we're gonna give you some of that. Anyway, I'm gonna end the vibe here and thing, you know. Remember to subscribe for some more. Hit the notification button so that you could be notified whenever I'm sending out videos and thing, you know. But in the meantime, while you're there, make it cool runnings.